Hello Bio 2, we're going to continue on with insects today. So we're in part 2 of section 3 in chapter 28, and this video is going to focus on insect communication, so the various ways that insects can communicate with one another. And they can do this in a variety of ways. They can use sounds, they can use visual, chemical, and other types of signals as well. And a majority of the communication within insects involves finding a mate. So for the most part, insects are going to communicate in order to find a way to reproduce, pass on their genes to the next generation. However, one big way that this happens is visual cues, and one really good example are fireflies. So male fireflies will use visual cues to communicate with their potential mates. So that we've all have seen this before in the summertime. They have a light-producing organ in the abdomen, and it's used to produce a distinct series of flashes. So what we just see as kind of random flashes going on is actually a very controlled and very kind of actually designed response that they're using to try to attract a mate. And when female fireflies see the signal, they flash back a signal of a known, and that induces the males to fly to them and to begin the mating process. So that is not just a bunch of random flashes going along in the summertime. It's actually fireflies actually using some good communication to actually find a mate. And so another way, not visual, almost kind of the exact opposite, is chemical signals. And many insects will communicate using chemical signals, and these chemicals are called pheromones. So that's going to be an important word you're going to need to know. And a pheromone is a specific chemical messenger that affects the behavior or development of other individuals of the same species. So a lot of insects can release these pheromones, and it can kind of induce different behaviors depending on what the pheromone is. And again, so some pheromones, I just kind of alluded to this, will function to signal alarm or alert other insects to the death of a member of the colony. So it can be served as like a, holy cow guys, watch out, one of the guys dead, so someone might be coming after you. And other pheromones will enable males and females to communicate during courtship and mating. So again, it's going to come back to a lot of trying to produce a mate, or trying to find a mate when we talk about insect communication. And then, so that is kind of the visual and chemical signals. So now, kind of going along with this, kind of getting more advanced in communication, is how insects can form society. So they're obviously going to have to communicate with each other if they're living in societies. So insects like ants, bees, and termites, and some of their relatives, they form a complex associations that are called societies. And it's just a group of closely related animals of the same species that will work together for the benefit of the entire group. So they kind of put aside their own personal gains to see how they can help out the group, how they can work together. And we call these systems that are called a caste. So a caste is how you say that. So in your history class, there's probably a time where the caste system that you've learned about was very popular, and so insects are kind of still living in that world today. And so within an insect society, individuals may be specialized to perform particular tasks or roles, and they are performed by groups or individuals called caste. And so each caste has a body form specialized to its role. So when you have a specific job within the colony or within the society, you are filling a specific caste or your role. And the basic castes are the reproductive female, which is known as the queen, reproductive males, and workers. And most insect societies will only have one queen. So these are the three different castes that are found in typical insect societies. And a tropical leafcutter ant colony is one example of an insect society, and they have obviously more roles than that, so that's why they're going to use that as an example, because it's kind of a more interesting group. And so individuals in this colony will have specific tasks or role, and so we'll talk about each one of those in more in depth. So we have one type of worker that's known as the major worker, and their job is to gather leaf tissue to use as a food source for fungus, in which the fungus then provides food for the colony. And I think someone would have looked at this example earlier on in the year. And smaller worker ants will ride atop the leaf, and they actually keep alert for potential threats. So the big workers carry the leaves back to the fungus farm, and they're smaller worker ants that are riding on top to kind of fend off any potential threats. And then there's the queen, and the queen's sole purpose is to lay eggs, and most of the eggs will become worker ants. And however, every once in a while there's a female that is born that it will become a queen, and however when that happens, it will leave the nest to start a new colony. And so our next one are called minor workers. So we have major and minor, and these chop the leaves into a fine paste. They tend to the garden, which is the fungus garden, and then they harvest fungus for other members of the colony. So again, 3 very specific different roles here. And so then our last one that fills the role here called soldiers, and these ants will guard the nest from potential attackers. And if you look, they have a large head, they have large mandibles, which again is going to come into big play here whenever they're trying to defend their colony from an attack. And so our last thing is communication within societies, kind of come in full circle here with what we started. So each species of social insects will use visual, touch, sound, and chemical signals to communicate information among members of this colony. So they can use a variety of different things to communicate to one another about various information that can occur. And one interesting example falls within honeybees, and they communicate using information about food through a series of complex movements. And so one way they do this is by what they call dancing. And so the first dance that they have is called the round dance. So when an insect or when a honeybee gets to the colony, they carry out a very specific set of movements, and when they do the round dance, it indicates that food is fairly close to the hive. So it's saying, hey guys, well, you need to go out and find this food. However, kind of the opposite is called the waggle dance, and this will indicate that food is farther away from the hive, and they can also indicate the direction of the food as well. So they have developed over time a way to communicate with one another by doing dances. So that's it for the insects. Let me know if you have any questions.